Victor Wembanyama is making his All-Star game debut this Sunday in San Francisco. This will be his first All-Star game, and he had some interesting things to say about this. So I'm going to read out some excerpts from this article. Here goes. If it turns out like every other recent game, slow and just playing around, I hope I can bring that contrast of a single guy who goes crazy, dives on the ball, hustles every play. I'm definitely going to try to bring that energy. I don't have any interest in making friends or trying to do anything. I'm here for work. So I love this attitude that Victor has. You want to see this competitive spirit from the young guys because they're the rising stars and hopefully future, ambassadors of this league. They're supposed to replace the old guard. So it's great to see this competitive spirit. This is what the All-Star game used to be about. It used to be about the younger guys trying to upstage the older guys who were already established. This goes back to the 80s. Granted, I can't remember the 80s since I was only an infant during that decade. I was, just in diapers at that time. But I still remember hearing the stories about how Jordan wanted to upstage the veteran all-stars, the established guys back when he first started playing in these all-star games. Hence the freeze out that they enacted it on him in his first all-star game back in 1985, where the East froze him out with Isaiah Thomas freezing him out and the rest of these guys not giving him the ball, and then the West deliberately trying to stop him. So they all felt threatened by Michael. Even back then, they knew he was going to be a rising star, and they knew that one day he was going to be a truly great player that can dominate the league. So they all felt threatened by him back then, by his image, his aura, and whatnot, and they went all out to stop him. But I felt that also added to the competitive fuel of the All-Star game back then. So you had that going on during the 80s, and Jordan, obviously, as we know, would get even with all those guys during that freeze-out game. But if you go even forward to just my childhood during the 90s, I can remember these types of moments. Like I remember watching Shaq's first All-Star game and seeing him get humiliated and seeing how the West straight up embarrassed him because they didn't like Shaq. They thought he was an arrogant young kid who was trying to embarrass them, and the West took it personally because Shaq played for the East back then. I still remember in watching that game seeing Shaq get doubled and triple teamed at times by Patrick Ewing, Hakeem Olajuwon, and Karl Malone. That was hysterical to see, just see Shaq get embarrassed the way he did. And I remember like the first 2 or 3 All-Star games, he was terrible because those guys from the West had a lot of pride and they were just not going to let him embarrass him. Embarrass them. They were just not going to allow it. And then fast forward to my young teenage years when I got to see Kobe's first All-Star game. That was also entertaining. Granted, I'm not a fan of Kobe, but I still remember him being this young kid who wanted to upstage Michael Jordan, who wanted to show people that he was better than Michael Jordan. At least he believed that. Granted, he wasn't, but he wanted to prove to people that he could outplay Michael. And that game was entertaining in the sense that he tried to upstage Michael, but he wasn't able to do so. In the East, ended up winning. It was Michael Jordan's last game as an all-star when it came to being in a Chicago Bulls jersey. So that game was very memorable, but it was also very competitive. So that stuff like that is what made the All-Star game great, was just that competition that was always fueled by the young guys going after the established older guys, and the established older guys having that pride where they just didn't want to get embarrassed. So that made the game competitive. That made it fun. I feel like we have been lacking that for a long time now. This All-Star game hasn't really been competitive in my eyes for like 20 some years. It hasn't been fun to watch because we haven't had guys who have that killer instinct that want to go out there and just embarrass other guys in the sense that that's what the competition needs. So I'm hoping Victor does live up to what he's saying, and if he does, then we could possibly get a very entertaining All-Star game. Just from a competition standpoint, we could see something fun to watch, something that could be very memorable. So I'm hoping that Victor actually goes out with that killer instinct, that competitive spirit, and we get rewarded with a great game on both sides where guys are playing with a lot of pride. So that's all we can hope for. Maybe they'll deliver.